What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Brandon's Face. It's the podcast about a playlist. I'm Jonathan Beardsley.
And I am Brandon May.
We hope you're all doing well. It is my favorite time of year, and that is Album of the Year season. We're going to start things off this year by talking about EDM, or electronic and dance music, in 2024. Just broadly, how did you like dance music this year?
This was actually an interesting year for dance music. It was filled with a lot of I feel like we got a lot of more subdued releases.
Hmm.
More so like subdued and chill and like synth driven records rather than hype up and harder albums, or at the very least from what we follow and what we talk about,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, the bigger bass sound is still very present, but it isn't necessarily the dominant, I guess, trend is the word I don't want to use, but that is what we should use because we'll have to talk a little bit about trends as we go through our lists here. It's been an interesting year. I do feel like the conversation of like, is this genre better this year as opposed to last year? It always feels like it's a yes because everything post-pandemic just feels like another year is kind of another return to normalcy in terms of like how many artists are releasing things. I think in terms of that, everything feels back to kind of like firing on full cylinders. A lot of the international artists are touring various countries again, which is leading them to finally release some of these long-term projects that might have been shelved. So I do think like a wealth of releases is helping this be a better year, but our list will reflect, man, there's just been some great dance music this year. It's been so fun this week to dive not
Fact.
just through our playlist, but into these albums in full again, you know?
Right, exactly.
And speaking of those, before we get into the albums themselves, I know we say this every year as well, but are full length EDM albums becoming a thing again? Like more so than usual?
I love that. I think that the collective social media driven shortening of the attention span needs to go, and people need to start listening to more albums.
Hmm.
I love that the artists that have always been artist albums are album artists
Hmm.
are continuing to do it, and not just saying, you know what, fuck it, I make more money on singles, but and I still book the same amount of shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, 100%. I think a lot of it also has to do with just when you're catering to a viral fandom, you're going to make money in streams, but a lot of that's going to be divided a lot of different ways. And it's not long-lasting fandom that will support your career as an artist. I think artists are realizing even if they hit viral fame, cater to your niche fan base because they're the ones that are going to keep you afloat through all of this beyond whatever viral fame you have. And in dance music, I feel like that's where a lot of hits in 2024 are coming from are from these viral moments in one way or another. But you know what I mean? Like it's a
Yeah.
different world now, and I think that a lot of producers have adapted very well, honestly.
Well, yeah, and I think this is this is the genre in which you can be a producer with like a team of people and a label behind you while simultaneously making the majority of your money performing alone. You know,
Hmm.
I'm sure that a lot of the larger uh artists, like take Zed for example, probably has an entire crew of people that help him set up his stage, but
Yeah.
Oscar Mulero probably does it himself. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that I think that a lot of artists, like you said, are indeed chasing that viral TikTok moment, and I think that is interesting. And I really love the album format though, and I really hope that a lot more artists, or the artists that, at the very least, that are doing the album format continue to do so, because that's my favorite thing, man.
Me too. And I think that's a big thing about why we love to do these episodes in particular, and also just something we bond over. We bond over songs, but you and I have bonded over our favorite artists and their best albums over the years, not necessarily their
Oh
best
yeah.
songs. I think that these are always the conversation points for certain music fans you and I alike. So it's nice to see them return to form. With that said, though, let's talk about our favorite albums of the year, man. So before we've done, top tens, top fives, I think we're going to kind of loosen it a little bit this year. We're going to pick one favorite each. We'll kind of talk about our other contenders, and then we'll broaden it just to know some notable releases that we should at least mention. So I'll go first on this one, man. My EDM album of the year. I hate that word EDM. My dance album of the year is Jamie XX in Waves. Big surprise, man. I think like Spotify Wrapped today to anybody listening around the time of this coming out. And I think three or four Jamie XX songs were in that top 100, which to anybody that's been around me this year, that is not a big surprise. I love the sound that this whole album captures. I thought it's the rare release where every single was almost getting better as it went along. I really haven't seen a lot of the live components of this show, but I'm sure they will be stellar. This album is just so good. I listened to it multiple times this week as a refresher, and every time I was just so happy, man. Uh, so before we talk about your favorite, Jamie XX, man, what did you think of In Waves this year?
Well, I mean, let's just spoil it because we have the same favorite EDM or dance album of the
Good.
year. I love this album. It was actually a pretty interesting ranking. I really did. I knew I was gonna like it, right? We all loved In Color, but In Waves, I thought I was gonna like it. I thought I was really gonna like it. I really didn't think it was gonna be one of those all-timers for me.
Hmm.
And it is, you know, and no, my number two slot or the runners up, if you will, were highly contentious. Great albums, but this Jamie album just really spoke to me, man. Tracks like Daffodil and all of the little tiny
Yes.
details and flourishes that you know that he spent all 9 years for this album to release working on, like those little crackles and Daffodil and
Baddie
just
on the
just
floor, treat each
oh
other
yeah.
right. Waited all
Oh
night,
yeah.
just like an unofficial XX song with Oliver Slim on there. Just insane, insane how deep
Right.
this album is. Almost every song is not just a no skip, but like a must listen, which is a different caliber.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And the way he uses the instruments just really spoke to me. We've talked a lot about this in metal. We've talked a lot about it in dance music and electronic music, but the way uh, artists use loud and powerful instruments very subtly
Hmm.
always kind of speaks to me with that sort of restraint that it must take to like the falling together, I think is the closer.
Hmm.
When I go back to that song, that like little tiny bit of 303 in that song, that instrument is powerful, it's iconic, it's been in dance music since the fucking 80s,
Yep.
and he uses just a little tiny little bit of it, and it sends me every time, man.
Same, dude. Yeah, and I think that it would have been easy for the album to feel like just a bunch of singles thrown together, but you're like you're saying, those little touches really help round it out. Doing the intro track into Treat Each Other Right just to make that all feel more fleshed out and complete. All the little things added up to make this just easily the best dance album of the year for you and me both. I think that it's interesting though, because I think in other genres, as we move through these episodes, there are going to be ones where I have one A and one B. This one stands head and shoulders above everything else that came out this year, even if only by a little bit. I think it is clear cut number one,
Yeah.
as evidenced by our
Yeah.
consensus pick. All right,
Yep.
let's. I have like four other projects that were I'll say all in the contender for two. What about you? How many like other strong contenders did you have?
I feel like there's like eight, bro. I have been critical this year, and I've really tried
Hmm.
to hold back a lot of my eights and my nines, but there has been some that have been, and I think I've done a decent job of holding back on tens. I don't think I gave anything a 10. I think I did give Jamie a 9.5.
Yeah.
But the next albums we're going to talk about, man, are just so good, you know? I have like at least, hold on, let me count them. One, two, three, four, five, six. Yes, seven that like really it's a toss up, you know?
All right, start with your first one on your runner-up list. Hit me with that one.
Floating Points Cascade. That's an easy one.
Yep.
Actually came out the same week as Jamie XX, with just the master of the synthesizer this year. I think if we're going to give
Yep.
a synth-driven album of the year, it's going to be this one, pretty easily. The way that Floating Points floats on this record
Had to say it.
is crazy, man. It totally immersive.
Yes.
There's that 7 minute fucking Ocotillo track, I think it is,
Hmm.
that just pummels me every time. It pummels me in glitter. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yes.
this whole thing is incredibly complex. It's beautiful, man. And that's I think it was it was I listened to both this and the Jamie a lot this week and thinking to myself like, man, which one of these is going to be it? And Jamie won out, but Floating Points deserves his flowers for sure.
Thank you for bringing this record up. I really wanted to talk about it as well. It's not quite in my top five, definitely in my top 10. That club mix of vocoder that it kicks off with is great. The tracks you mentioned, Ocotillo, are phenomenal. Fast Forward and Birth 4000 are also just incredible tracks. This whole album, front to back, is great. I think, like you said, the only thing it might have suffered from is being released at the same week as the other Best Dance album this year. This is just great, man. I've always liked Floating Points. This kind of solidified me as like every time he releases a track, I will be hitting play for sure.
Yep.
All right, my first pick in my runners up here. All of my runners up are a little weird here, typical John. Shy Girl, Club Shy. This
There she is.
EP is all fire, and not just the EP, the remix EP, all the deluxe tracks we've gotten, Encore, Immaculate, all of them. I got to see a few of these songs performed live, and a lot of the stuff I feel like she does could be lumped in with dance pop, but this girl is a producer in terms of dance music bangers at the highest level right now, man. Her shit translates live. It's fun to dance to. It's anthemic. It's clubby. It's poppy. It's everything I kind of needed this year when I wanted some just levity. And the project itself, Club Shy, if you're just going with the original version, is like 15 minutes. It's one of the easiest listens that came out this year. And as an EP, it stayed so high in my rotation that I had to put it in my runners up. You still bumping anything off this one?
I listened to it this week in preparation for the episode. Yeah, it still holds up. It's a good record, man. There's no doubt about it. I don't think I quite connected with it as much as you did, and that probably leans more towards your tastes as a
Definitely.
music consumer. I
Yeah.
it's funny. Our Wrapped came out
Trash.
today, and yeah, and there was ours were both so predictable for
Hmm.
us, and the
Yep.
fact that we like so much of the same music, yet our Spotify Wraps were so wildly different is
Yep.
honestly kind of funny, man. I'm glad that you connected with this album so much, and I'm really glad that you got to see her live. That's fucking amazing, man.
Yeah, we'll definitely be seeing her next time she comes through on a headline one. I think that would be more than worth checking out. What's your next runner up?
My next runner up is going to be Feed Me's
Hmm.
uh, Vintage Rally Challenge. I
Great
can't
album title.
man, it's if anybody who knows me and it was around in my raving days and when I was going to see Feed Me what feels like every 2 weeks, I would not be surprised by this, but like I really tried to find something about this record I didn't like this week. I was like, oh, there's got to be something, you know. And nope, there's really nothing, man. It's another no skip Feed Me record, and I am very proud to say that my tastes haven't really changed, I guess.
I feel like him releasing so much Spore music again too has really allowed him to just recommit to Electro House in a way with the Feed Me project that not that he hasn't in a while, but that feels, I don't know, refreshed or refocused in a way that I notice in the music. And I think that this album's a great example of that. That kickoff 100 Days, although the vocal refrain did get a little annoying to me, I still love those drops. Calorific was one of my favorite songs this year. I threw that
Oh
on our
yeah.
best of this week. Whole album is great. Didn't quite crack my top list, but it is a phenomenal one, and I'm glad you mentioned it.
Like I said in my review for this album, did he write this specifically for me? Because it has everything I like about Feed Me. It has all of his
Hmm.
progressions, his chord progressions. It has the way he blends synth lines and bass lines together with a lot of phenomenal just musicality to it, and I'm I loved this album.
The Gooch is one of the best, man. Um, my next runner-up, Wave Dash Tempo, another album that came out pretty earlier this year, and I just cannot stop listening to it still. I think just the way it flows together is a big reason why, but just the sound that they have locked in on and the way that it varies from kind of almost indie pop to just straight dance to, variations within the dance realm. It's so fun to me. It keeps me on my toes, and I just love how light this one feels. It's another one like Shy Girl that was almost levity for me whenever I threw it on. The singles, All Your Love and Had to Go, are both phenomenal, but there was like a track with Flux Pavilion on there that was fucking awesome. Really, really great record. Did this one end up cracking any of your top lists?
It didn't, but I knew it was going to crack yours, so I naturally went back and listened to it this year or this week rather, and
Yeah.
I enjoy this record, man. It doesn't, like I said about Shy Girl, it doesn't quite hit a lot of spots for me that it does for you, but that's
Mhm.
like okay, like I really enjoyed the what is it, like future bass or something like that. There's like a
Kind
specific
of,
term
yeah.
for like this thing. You don't know how is like obviously that's a banger. Had to Go is a good one. um and I really like that they kind of wore all of their influences on their sleeve.
Hmm.
It's one of those things where it's like you've got some very clear Porter Robinson influence on this album, and
Yeah.
that's fantastic. And I'm, you know what I mean? Like it's really cool to hear, almost like an homage, right?
Hmm. Yeah, the more Porter influence in dance music, the better, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think everybody would agree with that, but he is kind of one of the trendsetters. I wouldn't say he is setting the dominant trend in dance music currently. He's been there, done that, but you can hear the influence. They're obviously, he's a big fan of them, posts about them a lot. Maddion is on All Your Love. There's a lot of interconnectivity between them and those acts as well. And I think that it's great that they've kind of joined that group with this album, in my opinion, not just are one of the ones influenced. Like you are part of the group that's making that sound now. So shout out Wave Dash. Loved this album.
Shout
What's
out.
your next one?
You have to know that it's going to be Justice. You
I had a
know,
feeling. I had a
um,
feeling.
I actually High Justice, Hyper Drama. I really loved this album. Dear Allen has that fucking perfect bass line. There's tracks like Mannequin Love with like this gorgeous kind of production to it. And then obviously you get tracks like Generator that's just that are
Banger.
just all-time bangers.
Yeah. Multiple
Um
Tame Impala collabs on this one. Miguel,
yeah, yep.
Thundercat.
I
Yeah.
I think that this was, like I said during my review, I think this is Justice's Random Access Memories, and I love it.
It's their random access memories, except they do not appear to be winding down at all. I think they announced like six more US tour dates to extend their tour. They seem to have caught a second wind, and I think that we're all the ones benefiting from that. We heard, I think, Generator start being previewed in clubs late last year, early this year. The momentum was instant. I think that however you feel about One Night All Night and Never Ender is kind of just how you feel about Tame Impala more than Justice, but the album as a whole just cannot be denied in its quality. I saw Chapel Roan posted her like uh Spotify wrapped best of artists, and I was shocked that Justice was in her top five. So they
That's
are
awesome.
they're still influencing all over the board, man, which is fucking awesome for two French dudes who just smoke way too many cigarettes.
Hey, You let them smoke the cigarettes. Whatever's in those French cigarettes is giving them something really good to work with. I loved this album. There's no doubt about it. Pretty sure I gave it a 9 when it dropped. I think I might have settled a little bit more, probably more like an 8.5. But
Same. Yeah.
I think that it's a really good record, man. And their live show this year has been absolutely phenomenal. I have not seen it. Like you said, they have added some dates. They've added some festival dates as well. I believe they're playing a small for them venue. I think it's like 3,500 cap at the Santa Barbara Bowl, which should be wild.
Yep.
And yeah, that's great for them. I'm glad that they're killing it, and I'm glad that they got to debut their show at Coachella. I thought that was really sick. Yeah, this was a good one, and they seem to have, like you said, that second win, but they also have this like unavoidable like magnetism to whenever they do something, you know?
Yep.
Like I remember listening to Cross way back in the day and like waiting for audio video disco and then waiting again for woman and then waiting for this one, and it's there's something about them that just magnetizes the air around them, you know, they
Hmm.
electrify things. And Justice really did hit it out of the park with this one. If Jamie and Floating Points and Feed Me and hadn't released records, this would, I think, very clearly be a pretty big front
Yeah.
runner.
I think almost any other year this decade so far, this would be album of the year in the genre, no question. So
Yep.
speaks to how deep the pool is this year. I agree. Phenomenal
Right.
album, also in my top. My next one is True Magic by Salute. Another one I think I might have dug slightly more than you, but it's very much like the Wave Dash thing. It's got a very similar flow to it, vibe to it, maybe a little more disclosure coded than Porter Robinson and Maddie uncoded, but I don't know. It's just such an easy record to put on at almost any time. It's it's themed, but not like so over the top that it's cheese. The sonics that he went through are like a little bit more garage influence. Like I guess that's where I said the disclosure thing from. But yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
man. I did not know much about this artist before this year, and for him to just kind of drop an album like this that ends up as one of my favorites of the year speaks a lot to the quality of this fucking album, man. What did you think of this one? Did you end up revisiting this one at all after it dropped?
Yeah, I revisited this one as well. At the very, I'm not sure I listened to it front to back. I might have shuffled through a handful of songs. It's a good one. I think every time I came on, I was like, "Oh man, salute! And this track can get it." And I think that you definitely liked it a little bit more than I did. I did give it between a 7 and an 8, though. I, you know, this like pop house, but like you said, mixed with that kind of almost like British grime that Disclosure has, really
Hmm.
works. Really works for Salute. And lots of great house music this year. This one I
So
don't think
much.
really cracked my top, but it is still a great. It's like you said earlier. I mean, it speaks to the talent pool that we had this year.
What's your next one?
I think we're gonna have to go with Fortet's album.
Interesting. Three?
Uh, 3. Yes, I always think it's 4, but it's not.
This one's
Um,
a surprise to me a little bit. What I don't remember your score on this one. Was it like a 9? Was it that high?
I don't believe that it was quite that high, but let me see here. Fortet.
You have them logged. I love that.
Of course I do. Of course I do. What do you think this is? Let me find it here. Yeah, for some reason I can't find my review, but I remember really liking this
Classic
record. I ran
Brandon.
through it again. I know. I'm sure as soon as I'm done with this, I'll find it. But I do remember really liking this album. It's clearly a good one. It has this kind of like element to it that he takes his time and pushes thing forward. He uses
Hmm.
these bass lines that apparently he writes on his computer speakers, no like studio monitors or great headphones or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yep.
Like like Justice, he's been on tour for a while now. He's gone on tour with his he does a squid soup show, and it's nothing but him just making fucking sounds with his hardware, which is awesome to me. There's moments where he's just clearly vibing, right? Like the like tracks like 31 Bloom has this just that kick drum that it must be like seven different layered kick drums or something like that. He incorporated a lot of breaks, which we didn't hear a lot of this year. I remember he obviously worked with Skrillex a lot. He is just this ultra chill producer that, oh, like I said earlier at the start of this episode, we got a lot of chill, a lot of synth driven stuff, and I've been really digging that this year. I actually found my review. I actually did give it a 9 out of 10 when
I had
we
a feeling you
uh
did.
yep, when we reviewed it. So which makes sense because I listened to it again this week and was like, God, this is fucking good. We have like Daydream Repeat has that I believe that's the track with all like the fuzz elements to it, which is fun to hear in electronic music because that isn't really utilized a whole lot. Everything is really cleanly produced, and I think him utilizing stuff like fuzz and shit like that is very fortet of him.
It is very Fortet. This is one of the ones that resonated with you much more than me, obviously, since you're the one that
Mhm.
brought this one up. This didn't crack my best of list, but it is one I did come back to a little bit this week. Daydream Repeat is kind of the track from this one that's been mostly in my rotation since. I do agree with you in terms of like the synth driven albums. It's for sure one of the better ones. Not quite as great as the floating points one for me, but very, very well done as you would expect pretty much all Fortet stuff to do. And yeah, still touring, still always has those like hanging lights and shit. His shows seem awesome. So if you ever get the chance to check one out, please do.
Right.
Um, my last like real runner up is easily my most listened to this year, and that is the Challengers soundtrack by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, mixed by Boys Noise. This is a soundtrack to the movie Challengers, mixed by podcast favorite Boys Noise. I don't know if this is an album. I don't know if it's a mix. I don't know if it's a soundtrack. It's everything. I love the way this whole thing sounds. It's essentially like Nine Inch Nails and Boys Noise, which what the fuck is there not to love about that? They actually did a release of this one on vinyl for Record Store Day last week. I need to pick that up if I catch it in the wild, which I probably won't. But anyways, did you? I don't even know if I threw any songs from this on our best of, but I don't imagine you revisited this one, did you?
I did not.
Well, let me tell you, it's still a banger, and you should.
I remember liking it a lot. In fact, when I went through all of the electronic albums that we covered this year, I felt I did come across it, and I didn't listen to any songs because, well, it was a busy week. But
Sure.
I remember liking it.
Any other strong contenders you have before we just talk about some more notable releases?
Two more.
Yeah, hit me.
How the fuck have we not even mentioned Caribou's Honey yet?
Yep, on my
The
list to
fact
talk about next.
the fact that and now this is obviously number 6 or 7 on my list here, but and so it's not maybe like a runner up, but it 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 hit a lot of really,
Hmm.
really important spots in house music, man. It's got this bounce, pure house music with it. He is infectious as hell. And the fact that we're talking about Caribou as kind of an afterthought this year also speaks to how just absolutely fucking stacked this year was.
Yeah, I was not listening to a ton of Caribou before we started doing this podcast a few years ago. I've really ramped up in the time since because I just kind of love his sound. This is my favorite Caribou album. This is a fucking banger front to back. I love the singles. I love the way he put the album together. It is so good and definitely a top 10 worthy contender. Just didn't quite make the top of the top this year, but would not fault anybody if this was their favorite dance album this year. Not one bit.
No, I would totally understand that.
What's your other one?
Lane Eight's Childish,
I
another
had a
album that
feeling. Yep,
I really liked a lot more than you did,
you did.
for reasons that were unfortunate, but it really helped me through a pretty difficult week in my life. And every time I actually had trouble listening to it again this week because I kind of put it down after
Hmm.
all that happened. But listening to it again really did solidify the fact that Lane 8's fucking got it, bro. And it's another synth driven kind of lower BPM, uh, progressive house album, and with tracks like Art School Girlfriend, or the Deep with Art School Girlfriend, and The Choice with Arctic Lake, and just the sound design and the building of tracks like Childish, all really just scream the ju- it just screams this beautiful synthy deep house sound into whatever void that you may have. At least it did for me.
Yeah. Obviously, I did not have it nearly as high as you, surrounding circumstances aside, but great year for This Never Happened in general. He is the leader of that bunch, the de facto one nonetheless. Le Youth also put out a great project this year. I feel like we covered a few really strong EPs from that label in general, but this still feels like the centerpiece release for the label in general this year. I think it's the most complete album they put out. It is not my favorite Lane 8 album, admittedly, but any Lane 8 album is going to be pretty damn good. This one's no different in that regard.
Yeah, we covered quite a few of the EPs. I wish I could sit here and catalog all of them, but I think we covered at least seven
A
of them.
Cult? Is that one? A Cult?
I
I think
believe so.
that's,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
there's plenty more. Always great stuff, though. We'll definitely be hearing a lot more from them in 2025, I'm sure.
Yep.
All right, let's just talk about some of our kind of honorable mentions at this point. These are in no specific order. I got Annie Up, What is Life, a kind of a UK garage bass house record that I thought was a lot of fun. Maybe not like as great as I was hoping it would be based on the singles, but a lot of fun nonetheless. Did you have any thoughts on this one?
Yes, I did. This album vexed me when it came out, and it vexes me now, but it's one of those all over the place records that they like you said, it's like a UK garage slash bass house slash there's some like techno in there slash some acid.
Mm-hmm.
Like
A little bit of
there's a
everything.
lot, yeah, there's a lot happening on this record, which is great. But it simultaneously that takes away from it a little bit for me at least.
Mm-hmm.
So but it's a lot of fun, man. Tracks like Do You Know Where Your Kids Are, with those news reports it used to be 10 p.m. Now it's 3 a.m. Do you know where your kids are? What? Just
Very fun draw.
oh
Love
yeah,
that.
oh yeah.
Great album. Do you have any that you would like to
Yeah.
contribute? Yeah, hit me with
Uh
one of yours.
Nero Into the Unknown. I've
Great
waited for a new
pick.
Nero
Yep.
album for a long time. I think it was 9 fucking years or something like that. We got a little bit of drum
It
and
was a long
bass
wait.
from him. Yeah, we got a little drum and bass from him, which was nice. We got a lot of some dubby stuff. We even got some interesting, almost like happy hardcore-esque sounding stuff.
Yeah,
We heard some wobs and we heard some from
we
Nero, and
did.
I think that we have to at least mention it. You know what I mean?
Yes. Shout out Nero, Blame You. Great song. We'll definitely be keeping that one in the rotation going forward. The Blessed Madonna, Godspeed, an album we reviewed pretty recently, actually. And I think if it weren't so just like, I don't want to say bloated, but it's a little too
Got some filler.
expansive. Yeah, it has too much filler in it, but the high points of this album are up there. Happier, I think I threw that one on our playlist this week. Edge of a Saturday Night with Kylie Minogue. Both are just certified bangers, man. I really love her production style. This album did it for me. What about you?
It didn't, and I actually went back to it because when you rate things highly, John, I keep I esteem your opinions very highly
Thank you.
in my life, but it still doesn't do it for me. Between a 5 and a 6 is what I gave it when we reviewed. Nowhere Fast was my standout. I came back to
Hmm.
that one quite a bit this week. It is a great song. There are some great tracks on this, mixable, dancing, some great samples, but
Yep,
the album was as a whole didn't really do it for me.
that's fair. What's your next one?
Um, I think we got to talk about another one that maybe you didn't like that much from
Hit me.
but Tin Liquor, Cold Enough for Snow
Yep.
rather.
We
Uh
both do this so we can cover everything, whether we like it or not.
right. Right. I I went back to this album quite a bit this week, and I love the fact that they reached out to rock musicians to get vocalists. That's really cool in my opinion. Something that a lot of dance music artists, specifically like this style of progressive house music artists, don't really do that often. Like Brian Molko from Placebo
Yep,
is wild, and his voice
that song
sounds
is so good.
incredible on on that song, man. It's really deep house, really trancy, really progressive stuff. A lot of the songs take a long time to get to the point, but maybe that is the point. Maybe the friends we made were the buildups along the way. You know what I mean?
They most definitely were. Not one of my favorite albums of the year, but that song with Brian Molko and Nowhere to Go is definitely one of my favorite dance songs of the year.
Yep.
I need to hear this guy do more collabs, as long as they're artistically aligned with his voice, I guess. I don't want to
Right.
hear him doing some bullshit. All right, we got this one might surprise you a little bit, and I gave it a pretty high score when it came out. I revisited it to make sure I still felt this way. Isonoc Forever. This EP is really good. We are not like haters of either of these artists by any means. We're like cautiously optimistic that they will be fun to watch going forward, but not necessarily trying to buy into the hype of which there is plenty. But this is a hell of a start. I know they both put out solo projects before this, but in terms of their name growing together, which it kind of has in a way that not two solo artists really do in this way. It's really interesting the way they're rising together both separately. This project being the anchor of that, went back to it multiple times, like I said, and it is just so good every time, man. What about you? Did you circle back to this one at all?
I tried, man. We've talked about it
No, not
quite
for
a
you.
bit. There's a lot of hype around these guys. I think the Isonox sold out like 6 Shrine shows, like back to back to back to back to back to back,
Hmm.
which is undeniably impressive. Nobody can take that away from them. And if people are resonating with their music, then that's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
Listening to this,
clearly are.
uh, yeah, listening to this album for the first time with my wife was really funny because we were all in the trap era, right? I mean, you did a
Sure,
trap set at an illegal warehouse rave out here in Indio,
I did.
and it's it's one of those moments in time that like it's so funny to like go back and like look at everything that had happened or that has happened in that scene because it died pretty quickly.
Hmm.
And Isonoc bringing it back was really cool because it felt like a time capsule to 2014. On that note, though, I hear a lot of Knock 2 on his solo projects, and I like that so much better, man. I don't think that him and ISOXO work as well together as I want them to, or maybe other people here. Maybe I'm just an idiot and I can't hear it. This album didn't do it for me. It didn't when we reviewed it, besides the fact that it's a cute little time capsule. But I'm really glad you liked it, and I'm glad that they're getting some hype. I think that we needed some of that youthful energy
Sure.
in the EDM sphere because everybody's sick of Calvin Harris headlining shit. So why not give it to the young guys?
Yeah, we are definitely not talking about whatever fucking 96 months or whatever album that is today. All right, man. What's your next runner up?
Um, we have Let's talk about this. It's not an album, but it's
Sure.
worth it. Some EP by Dead Mouse.
Interesting one because it's also kind of like a split with his test pilot alias, correct?
Yeah, so he's got that wet track with himself,
Yep,
featuring
and then
himself.
Quetzalcoatl is on there too. A phenomenal fucking song. Feels like
Phenomenal
old Dead
song.
Mouse brought back to life. Great mention, man. Any other tracks on there you want to mention?
No, those are the ones, and it's just sublime to hear that level of Dead Mouse come back. You know what I mean?
I agree, man. I got a few more to talk about here. You didn't think I was gonna not let you talk about John Summit one more time this year, right? His debut album, Comfort in Chaos, came out, and I thought it was pretty good. I re went back to it this week. I still think it's pretty good. I actually think as an album, it's a little better to go back to now, like separated from the singles, because that rollout was kind of like a 2 year, it was an EDM rollout. Like it wasn't intentional that the first singles that ended up on the album were going to be part of an album a year or two later, but that ended up being the case. All of that, like context aside and fresh ears on the album now, I still don't love it. I still think it's like about a 7, but I do think it's worth mentioning as a solid debut for a massive artist in the genre right now. Any thoughts on Comfort and Chaos?
No, but I have thoughts on John Summit. Everybody heard my
Please.
review. If you didn't, then go listen to it. But I didn't like it. Spoiler. I think I gave it a 5 or a 6, one of those. I
Hater.
I probably should have rated it lower. It's not good. But what I will say is that John Summit is working very hard. And I think that that deserves all the hype that anybody wants to give them. The guy has very clearly found a niche. He has very clearly exploited that niche. He has been chasing some trends, but he's always been at the forefront of the chase. If you like, he's always been like the leader in tag, you know?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
that says something, man.
yeah, it's not an easy spot to get to whether you think it's deserved or not. The guy works
Exactly.
very hard whether or not you like the music or connect with it as much as other people are. And I'm kind of in between. I see a lot of his fans online and I'm like, I don't think any of these things. Like, I'm not that high on this guy. I think he's good at what he does when he locks into certain sounds that I like that Where You Are track with Hala. Hala's kind of a cheat code to put on vocals though.
Right.
Um, Anyways, I think it was a good debut. I at least thought it was a better debut than you did. Not an album of the year, but worth mentioning this year in terms of notable releases nonetheless. One more I got for you that I know you're not going to agree with, so I'll just throw it out here. Kaytranada's Timeless. I have always been the not just the bigger Kaytranada fan of the two of us, but the only Kaytranada fan of the two of us. And that continued with this album, man. It had some really fun Kaytranada-esque dance music throughout it. Probably highlighted best by that track with Gambino Witchy, which I think is nominated for a Grammy or two. I like this album. I don't love it, but I do like it. Did you circle back to this at all? And if
I
so, do you
did.
feel any differently?
I did circle back to it, and I did this thing where early in the week I was putting my playlist of pretty much all of the EDM albums that we covered this year, all of the dance albums that we covered this year. I put through them all in a playlist and I shuffled it. And every single time Kate Renata came on, I go, man, this song fucking sucks, and I skipped it. But I I like John Summit, man. I respect the guy. He's clearly doing something very cool and something that's very clearly too cool for me. He played and headlined Desert Air out here at the Palm Springs Air Museum. Good for him. Clearly has gotten a lot of flowers for the work that he's done. Clearly is a versatile producer, whether or not I like the sounds that come out of his productions. And there's not much else to say about it, man.
That's more than fair, man. I knew you weren't gonna have like much of a revelation in terms of the way you felt, but I'm glad you circled back to it at least. Any
For
more
you,
honorable
I would do
mentions?
most of I would circle back to most albums.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, I've got two of them.
Yeah,
The
hit me.
fact, so like last year or even the year before, if you had said, "Hey man, Rufus Du Sol is going to put out an album in
Hmm.
2024 and you're not going to rate it in your top 10."
Yep.
I would have been like, "Just shut the fuck up, bro." Well, it happened. I believe I gave it a 6 when we reviewed it. Inhale, Exhale is I went back to it. There's some really cool moments on it, and when you're really, really not listening to the music or the lyrics rather, they the songs are great background music, but that sucks that I have to say that with a Refuse to
Yeah,
Soul album. The
some
big swing and a
cheese.
miss for them, but there is some cheese that I like. So
Hmm.
there's a couple moments on this. Breathe is one of the
Break my
moments.
love.
Yep. Standing at the gates is a pretty good one.
Hmm.
Kind of staying in their lane, but also doing something a little different. I wish that they progressed a little bit more, and I'll stick to their earlier stuff.
Hey, yeah, that's more than fair. What's your other honorable mention you had?
I have one with, please hold, Boris
Holden.
Brejcha.
Ah, yeah, that's another one that it's like if I told you, hey, next year Boris is gonna release a full length and it's not even gonna be in your top 10, you would not fucking believe me at all.
Exactly, but also like add to that sentence. Boris Brejcha is going to release a full length. They're going to be all 8 minutes. It's not even going to crack your top 10 is wild to me. But I went back to a lot of these songs, and every single one of these songs I like a lot. I actually listened to Vienna, the radio edit, and I hate the
Hmm.
radio edit, but I really love the 7.5 minute version. It's so good. There's moments on this that feel like he kind of cracked a he kind of sprinkled his secret spice on them, and they just fucking work. Then there's
Yep.
others where it's like, God, get to the point, man. And
Yep.
yeah, so it's one of those. But it's worth mentioning. The guy has had a wild few years playing Coachella again this coming year. So
He can't be stopped. The mask will be everywhere eventually. I know it.
one can
I
only hope.
I got two more to talk about. That's Nia Archive, Silence is Loud. I really like this record. I struggle to call it like a full-on dance record at times, although I think it mostly is that, so I put it here. But another just debut album that I was kind of not really knowing what to expect from, but was happily surprised with when it came out. Did you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I actually came back to this one quite a bit this year, or this week rather. I love this album. It is Yeah, I struggle to put it into it's drum and bass. Like there's some drum and bass, there's lots of garage influence, but is it though?
It's almost
Right?
like indie garage. Yeah.
Is it though? And so it's one of those things where it was so borderline. I mean, it's hard for me to put it in my favorite dance albums because it just doesn't fit quite right, but it's still a great album.
I would put her Boiler Room set amongst my favorite Boiler Room sets this year. But yeah, the album
A good
probably
one.
not amongst my favorites, but a really, really great album. And one more, Peggy Gao, I Hear You. This is another one that I think almost translates better live, or in the songs translate better in her live sets than listening to the album. But I went back to this one, still slaps. What about you? Did you go back to this at all?
Yeah, I went back to it. It's good.
It was all
It's
right.
one
Yeah,
of those that
you
like
didn't love it, I don't
I
think, when
did
it
I didn't love it, but you know what? It's so good, but we're so saturated with talent that it's hard to
no.
have discussions about things that are good when there's greatness right around the corner, you know?
Well, that wraps up my honorable mentions. Did you have any more you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, a couple, at least one other
Yeah,
release.
hit me up.
Well, you know what? There's two of them. Anima. We didn't even talk about it. Didn't even
Yeah,
come up. Dude had such a big fucking year, and this album was exactly the same as his first album. But this one was also good because it was exactly the same as his first album.
he will be headlining the Sphere later this month. Those visuals, once those leak, are going to be everywhere. That's going to be insane.
I'm cautiously optimistic that they're going to work well in that setting, but we'll see.
They will. They will. Anyways, what's your other one?
And then we also have Rinzin. Rinzin dropped an album
Oh
this
yeah, you
year.
really liked that one.
Yeah, that I again, I don't think you really resonated quite with it, but Bend to the Light was the name of it. Lots of great deep progressive house in it, and I did really like this album. I wanted to mention it in our year-end list. It did
Mhm.
not crack my top 10, but again, it's one of those things that's like if you told me, you know.
Yeah, oh, 100%. And since we've wrapped up this, I'm just gonna like kind of scroll through and read some quick ones that we've missed that aren't bad albums. That's how stacked this year was. Jai Wolf, Kiza, Keto, LPGOB put out an album that we did not talk about at all. Rez put out, I think, a few projects this year. Spore put out a project. Tovlo and SG Lewis put out a project. Vintage Culture put out an album this year. If you like dance music, make sure to check out our playlist for sure. I think I got most of the best on it. But dude, there was so much this year. Please, like it is so fun to dive in. But there was some that was not so great. I do have a few disappointing releases. I don't know if you have any off the top of your head, but Fred Again, 10 Days. Places to Be is one of my favorite dance songs of the year, but this is one of my least favorite dance albums of the year, without question. What about you? Did you find any love for this one as time went on?
And I think that it is both bad and overrated somehow. It's
Oh,
it's
double negative.
it really isn't good, man. And it everybody was talking about how it's like his actual life stuff. It's not like his actual life stuff. His actual life stuff is actually very good. This album was an album that he released to capitalize on the capitalization that he made from doing some live shows that really resonated with people. And I think that he even struggled to sell out the Coliseum this year. The fact that he was like rumored to headline Coachella is wild to me, because that
No, thank you.
I as much as I love how much talent and how much raw youthful energy, like I said earlier in this podcast, right? In
Mhm.
this episode, we talked about it. I think that we should give the young kids more of the spotlight. I think we need more young headliner energy. I don't think Fred again is it, and I will die on this hill, apparently.
I think he has the talent and the crowd connection to be it. Whether or not he has the catalog at this point, I think is a very strong case to make.
Yeah.
Calvin Harris, 96 Months. We touched on that one. Not even really a new album, just literally a collection of every single he's put out over the last 9+ years. There's some good songs on there, but as a whole, it's a fucking mess, and I do not recommend it. Giselle Fulstein, this one hurts me. Gamma, I did not like this album. Circled back to it this week because I was like, wait, Giselle Fulstein put out an album this year? I like Hard Dreams. I do not like this album though. Some of the percussive elements still slap. The live show still slaps. I have to get out all these caveats so that the Giselle Fulstein fans will still accept me.
Yeah,
But
the hive mind.
yeah, this I don't know, man. This album did not do it for me. My least favorite of his so far. What about you?
You know, man, I will 100% agree with you. I really wanted to like this album, and I think I convinced myself that I did well when we reviewed it. I went back to a lot of the songs, and a lot of it is filler, and it is a disappointing album for sure.
Yeah, like, dude, we've all listened to She Wants Revenge and been like, I want to start a band, but like we didn't, we didn't make a whole album about it. All right, one I got here that I don't know will be on yours. I think you like this album at least incrementally more than me. It's the only other one I have, and that's Telos by Zed. I don't think this album is quite as bad as the other ones. I just think for the weight that it took to get here, there wasn't enough show-stopping Zed songs or enough old school electro house Zed bangers to really keep me engaged with it. What about you? Am I too hard on this one?
I think you're a little hard on this one. I liked it. I think a little bit more than marginally than you, more than you did. But I will agree with you that there's not enough electro house. I don't think that there's any show-stopping Zed moments. But I think that the caveat to that statement is that Zed did that. He already did that. And
Mhm.
if we had not waited more than, I don't know, a year to get this album from his last one, then I think we would have been like, this is a banger, bro. There's some banger tracks on here. But because we waited so long, like with that Nero album or that Jamie XX
Yeah.
album, we were like, man, it's gotta be good, dude. It's gonna be so good. And we built ourselves up into thinking that the creativity that he takes with his live shows or even his DJ sets, because they really are one of a kind,
Mhm.
uh, that he was going to take that creativity and that would transfer into the production side of things. But I think the reality is that Zed doesn't have to do that. Zed can make a banger or two, get nominated for a Grammy, go on tour, make a couple $1 million, and coast for the next 8 years until he needs to put out another album and do another tour cycle.
Yeah, I agree. He is still one of the like biggest names in dance music. I imagine he'll pull a headline slot at any festival. These tracks just didn't do it for me, and I'm glad you were on the same page as me, at least with that. That wraps up the disappointing release. Like we said, this was a stacked year. We did not have too many disappointing releases. A few just quick fire topics. Was there any song this week as you were like listening to your albums or just the Brandon's Face playlist that stood out to you as like your favorite dance song this year, your fucking jam whenever it came on?
You know, man, I think I'm gonna have to go with, weirdly enough, Honey by Caribou.
That's a fucking great pick, man. I love that just bass current in that song. It sounds so good. It almost feels good to listen to in the car when you can feel the
It's insane.
reverberation. Mine's gonna be Boo Boo by Yeji. The song is so
There you
stupid and
go.
so fun. Listen to it like a million times a day. Separate from favorite album, is there just an artist right now? It doesn't even have to be like this person released the most amount of singles I like, so it's that. Just kind of who's your favorite artist in EDM right now, or somebody you're really digging?
It's 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 got to be Jamie XX, man. The guy right now, I think that he's not going to be as active as he is this year. I think we're going to see
This
we're
was
going to
the
see a
year.
flash.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to see a flash in the pan, and then boop, poof, he's going to go. So if I had to say, if I had to pick an artist that's like currently actively producing and dropping and all of that,
Yeah.
I would probably say, what, man, I'm excited to see what Anti Up does. But I listen to
Yeah.
a lot of really underground techno music from labels that you probably have heard of, but like don't care about the releases of, and
Hmm.
I think that Anti Up did something completely opposite to that, but also
Yeah.
incorporated it into their music, which I love. So I'm very curious to see how Anti Up goes in the future. What about
I
you?
am I am very curious to see that. And that's an interesting pick for you. You weren't hard on Chris Lake, but you're always I don't think you're like bought into the hype as much as everybody else with him. But I do think like the attention that to detail that they took with that album, like we just talked about, really elevated them as artists and just that project as a whole. I agree. I hope that it's not one of those like Magnetic Man things that in 10 years we're like, how come they never followed that up? That makes no sense.
Right.
It's a great project. My pick is not gonna be one you agree with. Dom Dolla, man, this dude has been crushing it for like the last 2 or 3 years. I feel like he only puts out 2 or 3 songs a year, really, but I feel like he's made them all count. His live shows have been great. His remixes are not like overdone. He only really does those when it's kind of worth doing. He's headlining Madison Square Garden early next year. He's already started teasing a new song. I think that'll be dropping early next year as well. The dude is on a roll, and I'm very much digging the sound. Any thoughts on Dom Dalla?
Man, didn't we talk about him today where I said I hope he sells that shit out? He
Yeah, I
announced
text you
Madison
the
Square Garden.
MSG flyer. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, big
I
opportunity.
man, I might be immune to hype. I might actually be actively allergic to hype. But just like Anti Up, I'm so excited to see where Dom Dalla goes. I hope that he doesn't go the way of Chami, which was hype, 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 and then what the fuck are you releasing, bro? I hope that he continues to evolve and do the things that he needs to do to stay as popular as he is.
Yeah, man. He's gonna be one of the big ones. Obviously, he has a project with John Summit, who you've notably talked about even on this very episode. So I feel like both of them are kind of rising stars in that regard. We'll see if they hit a ceiling at all, but I don't think Dom is going to. We'll be interested to see if he goes the full length album route in the next year or two, though. I think that's kind of the next move. You're already playing big shows and big festivals and drum sheds and this and that. Lock in, make an album.
Lock in,
So
bro.
all right, let's just run through a few artists to watch in 2025. I got a few coming off this year. Clooney, Joy Orbison, one of the tracks I threw on this week's playlist was from there. Malp, big name going around. Pasa did not like that last track that we talked about, but I think his work recently has been very great. And then in the kind of heavier bass realm, Ray Volpe has been blowing the fuck up, and good for him, man. His songs are a lot of fun. Any artists you kind of want to put just a watch out for them next year tag
Yeah, we
on?
yeah, we covered a couple of Ray tracks, I think early this year or maybe even late last year that really were like, oh yeah, let's do that.
Yep.
Yeah, actually, I have two. I have Barry Can't Swim and Two Shell. I think
Great
that
picks.
I think that both of them are doing something very, very interesting. And I think at least Two Shell had the album this year, which we didn't talk about on this episode for some reason. I
Yeah,
liked that
another
album a
one.
lot.
Yeah.
My God, man, this year's been fucking stacked. And I actually think EDM was one of the lighter
I
genres
agree. I agree.
for how stacked it was. But Two Shell had an album this year. Barry Can't Swim had a record last year. I think that they're making the music in this very sort of very specific realm of things that is going to they're gonna find their niche, and I hope that they exploit the shit out of it just like Fred again did. They've got this kind of like live band live show while staying in the EDM world. They've got like the perfect sunset at a festival vibe. I hope that both Barry Can't Swim and Two Shell continue to just fucking crush it.
I do as well. Are two shell industry plants? Has anybody figured this out? Are they? Is that a real
Is Knox 2 an
thing?
industry plan? Is John? I'm just kidding. But no,
Oh man.
I don't know. Maybe it's
No,
possible.
no, no. They were good. Really solid debut album as well. If we brought up John Summit's debut, we should most definitely bring up Two Shell's debut. All right,
Real,
that
real.
does it for our dance music best of 2024 episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you tune in next week. We're going to be talking about our best pop and R&B releases. This is the first year we're going to be combining those genres. As an R&B fan, that does sadden me to do, but I can no longer ignore the way they've become just inseparable at this point. So yeah,
Yeah.
tune in next week. Best of 2024 pop and R&B. Check us out on Instagram and Reddit if you want to follow along with all of our latest updates. You can also follow the link in the show notes to follow our weekly rotating playlist. We'll be putting the best of on this week in terms of all that. That's always one of the best ones of the year. Make sure you're following. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.